What is the right approach to choose the correct country to study at?
First thing that a student should do is introspect and find out what it is exactly that they want and who they are as a person, what environment they will thrive in.
So, what is different about studying an undergrad at Scotland?
Flexibility to study multiple subjects together.
How important is a ranking of a university while making a decision?
See, it is important, I won't lie to you. If you have the grades and if you have the profile, the higher rank the university, the better your prospects for college.
Hello, I am Kshama Jain and I welcome you to our channel Careers with Shama, where we bring to you interesting stories of people and their career journeys. Today, we have a very special guest who's lived in 3 countries and 3 top cities of the world, being New York, London, and Sydney, and she's worked in finance for 10 years before moving on to the education industry. Welcome, Akriti.
Thank you, Shama. Thanks for having me here today.
So, let's start with introducing yourself for our guests.
Sure. So I'm Akriti. I'm actually from Kolkata. I was born and brought up here. At the age of 18, I went to New York University for my college. I was there for 4 years. After graduation, I worked in New York with BNP Paribas in their credit analysis team for a year. And then I moved from the US to Australia. I lived in Sydney for a year and worked with the same bank. After that, I moved back to India to start my own finance venture. And during COVID in 2021, I decided I wanted to pursue further education and I applied for MBA. I got into the Imperial College of London for MBA and I pursued that and I completed that in 2023. So as such, I've been in the finance industry for majority of my career for 10 years. But after my MBA, I realized I have a big passion for education and I wanted to be in this industry. And I've switched from finance to education last year. And I currently work with University of St. Andrews, Scotland as a senior manager for the India region.
Wow, that actually sounds like a dream because a lot of students aspire to go to universities like NYU, Imperial, and St. Andrews. So, what exactly can you tell us more about your work and how exactly you're associated with St. Andrews?
Sure. So I am the senior recruitment manager for St. Andrews. We have a small team based in India and we take care of recruitment, alumni engagement, as well as business development in India. We are the first point of contact for any student that is applying from India to St. Andrews. We look at both undergraduate as well as postgraduate programs. And so I just joined this job. It's been a little bit less than a year now, and I'm really enjoying it. I love meeting young kids. I love interacting with school administrators, and I like collaborating with my team in Scotland.
You know, study abroad actually is a dream to so many students, but there are so many complexities that come with it. You obviously know about it because as a senior student admissions manager, you come across so many students who are choosing their college. So, what do you think? What is the right approach to choose the correct country to study at in the first place?
Right. So that's a great question, Shama. I think the first thing that a student should do is introspect and find out what it is exactly that they want and who they are as a person, what environment they will thrive in. So each country, while every country has its pros and cons, they have a certain unique aspect. In the UK, majority of the UK, except Scotland, if you know which subject you want to study and you're already very sure, that's great to go to the UK. It's a 3-year education for undergrad. And it's very, you go in for that particular subject and you study just that subject for 3 years. Supposedly, you're not very sure which subject you want to study, or you want to study more than one subject, then going to Scotland or going to the US is a good option because we offer flexibility of exploring different courses. It's kind of the liberal arts method of education, and for a couple of years you can explore different subjects and then make a choice in which subject you want to major in and graduate in. And similarly, you can also look at the vibe of the place. If you are more looking at big campuses, college campus oriented things, then you should choose those kind of colleges. And if you want a big city life, then you should choose city campuses.
So, what is different about studying an undergrad at Scotland?
Right. So that, like I mentioned, in the rest of the UK, undergrad degree is for 3 years, and you supposedly you apply for finance, right? You have to study finance for 3 years, and you'll be studying various subtopics within finance. But for example, if you have a great passion for finance and psychology, you can't pursue both in most of the England and the rest of UK colleges. But in Scotland, specifically in St Andrews, we offer you flexibility to study multiple subjects together. And if you're not sure which subject you want to study, you can actually explore, and find out where your actual interest lies. So you come in to a Scottish college, then you are with the subject that you've applied for, you are having to take two other subjects with it, and it's only in the third year that you have to decide which subject you want to go ahead and graduate in.
That's interesting. So, while a student is making a decision to study abroad, a lot of students just look at websites like QS and Times Higher Education and you view these rankings to decide where they want to study. How important is a ranking of a university while making a decision to select a university?
See, it is important. I won't lie to you. If you have the grades and if you have the profile, the higher rank the university, the better your prospects for college. However, it's not the end all and be all. If you do not have the grades and the profile to get into a top 5 college in the world, then it doesn't mean that, that's where your life is going to end. There are plenty of great colleges who do not make the top rankings, but they still offer amazing resources and great faculty, great student experience, and also you can get, good job and thrive in your career after that. So I wouldn't hold, while it is important, the only thing you can do about getting into a great ranked university is to strengthen your profile through academics, extracurriculars, and your application, right? So after that, it's not in your control.
Correct. So, what are the entry requirements for? So, as we know, St Andrews also lies in the top 10 universities in the UK. What are the entry requirements for St Andrews University?
Sure. So it differs from subject to subject, which a subject you're applying for. But in general, if I have to say, you should be having good grades. So if you're doing ISC or CBSC, then you should be having at least 93% best of 5 subjects. If you're doing IB, then it's 36 minimum, right? The core subject should also be above 90%. Apart from that, we require you to submit. You apply through UCAS. In the UK, you apply for 5 colleges at the same time. St Andrews, you can also apply through Common App because we have that 4-year US system of the degree. So you apply with your transcripts. You give in one academic recommendation letter, LOR. You also have to write a personal statement, which is 4,000 characters in the UCAS, in which you need to highlight the passion for your subject and who you are, what are your aspirations, what are your motivations. And that's what your academic and application requirements are.
What are the most important parts of the application? How much does an SOP, the statement of purpose, or a letter of recommendation from a professor hold value in the application?
Absolutely. While grades are very important and they are the kind of the first filter, especially for St. Andrews, if you don't have the required grades, it's an automatic reject for the, especially for competitive programs. The second most aspect I would say is the personal statement, because that's the one piece of writing that the student is submitting. And that is helping us distinguish between, say, if there are 10 students, they are all 90 plus students, and they all are, president of this club and, basketball team captain, and they have amazing extracurriculars and super curriculars. how do we distinguish between them? So we use the personal statement
Storyline.
for that. We want to see what is their attraction to the subject that they're applying for, and how have they pursued that outside the classroom, right? And what do they aspire to do with it in the future? How will they contribute to the classroom once they come to St. Andrews?
So, if a student is not matching the grade requirement, how can they study at St. Andrews?
So certain courses they can apply for which have a slightly less competitive threshold. Like I mentioned, 93% is our kind of typical for most programs, but certain subjects are less competitive. However, if they don't have, like if they're an 80% student, then they're probably unlikely to get in, because St. Andrews is very selective.
Competitive.
And we take, like we have a less than 10% acceptance rate.
So, what are the most competitive programs, and what are the least competitive programs which have a higher acceptance rate?
Sure, one of our most popular programs, we are, I think, one amongst the top in the world for, is international relations. Apart from that, our finance and economics program, computer science, English literature, these are all very well known and very popular, and we get tons of applications. So these would be probably the toughest to get into. Slightly newer programs like sustainability or environmental sciences, these might be slightly easier. However, that said, I'm not talking about the exact threshold for the grades. That you can find that online on our website. Yeah.
So, what is that one biggest mistake that Indian students are making while applying to a university?
I think they are playing too much by these rules and the rule book. Nowadays each application comes almost like perfect, because people go to counselors and they overdo the application, and try to project themselves as the next Mark Zuckerberg or like the next Steve Jobs, which, well, it's highly unlikely, right? So I would say is I find the biggest mistake is trying to project yourself as too perfect. It's okay, you're flawed at the age of 18. I mean, think about us, Shama. We were like quite clueless in life, okay? But we had a drive, and we had the mentality to explore and experiment and work hard. And that's what we're looking for, is that who the student is, that they are dedicated, that they're hardworking. It's okay if they have failed at a few things. It's okay if they're not perfect. We want to see the growth. We want to be able to see that they can come back from falls.
Yeah, okay, I understand what you are saying. And I think students should really also focus on being authentic
Correct.
and not just being perfect.
Yeah, they are trying to give us what we think we want to see, right? Rather than just being themselves.
So, what exactly, you are a part of the admissions team and you go through thousands of applications every year. So, what is that one thing that you're looking at in the application?
Okay, so for St. Andrews specifically, we look at passion for the subject of study. So we would, UK compared to the US is more academic focused. Okay, the US looks at a little bit more holistic, little more creativity and, those aspects. But the UK, we kind of begin from academics and give maximum emphasis to that. So by that, what I mean is that supposedly you want to study marketing, right? We want to see what have you done with that subject so far. Apart from the textbook study in the classroom, have you pursued it outside? Have you done any courses? Have you taken up any internships? Are you part of the marketing club in your school? So these things which are reflecting your deep interest in that subject, that's the most important thing for us.
Okay. So now, once a student gets accepted and makes it to the UK and goes to St. Andrews University, how does a student experience look like?
So, St. Andrews is a small town. It's a 1 hour away from Edinburgh. It's a beautiful coastal town, long sandy beaches. St. Andrews is the first university that was ever made in Scotland. It's around 700 plus years old, and it has huge historic significance. The town is very small. It's got only 22,000 people, out of which 10,000 are students. So it's very much a college town, a small, close-knit society. And so if you come there, what you can expect is to have, a very close and very tight-knit connection with your peers and your faculty. Our classroom sizes are smaller. You can be walking down your streets and you'll be seeing all your classmates around you. There's nobody else, kind of, not too many people from outside the academic life there. So you're very entrenched and immersed in that academic environment. So the way I like to tell my prospective students is that it's like being in a boarding school, which is, always great fun, boarding schools, without the restrictions of a boarding school. So you do get that companionship and that bonding and, that the experience of closeness and community without any restrictions.
So, what does the tuition fees of a student in St. Andrews look like?
Yeah, so we are approximately around £30,000 per year, and it's a 4-year course, so which translates to around 30 lakh rupees, depending on what the conversion rate is at the time that you're going.
Okay. And can students pay their expenses while they're studying there by themselves by working part time?
Yeah, sure, they can if student chooses to work part time. That they're provided they are following the visa restrictions that are there. They can work part time and help support their education. And there are plenty of on campus jobs available on St. Andrews as well.
So, to work part time at St. Andrews while you're studying there, what are the visa restrictions?
Yeah, so you can work up to 20 hours a week part time while you're still pursuing your classes. And you can take up any kind of job which is to your interest. It could be related to your study, it could be completely unrelated. Yeah.
So, what are some ways to save money as an international student in Scotland?
To save, so first of all, the cost of living and accommodation in a town like St. Andrews is much less compared to a London for obvious reasons. So you, by choosing St. Andrews, you are saving on the living cost automatically. Apart from that, if you are concerned about saving costs, I think, cooking on your own instead of like going out, taking second-hand books from seniors rather than purchasing new books, minimizing your costs of entertainment. And while a lot of the facilities at St. Andrews are free of cost, like your sports center is there, you have the beaches, you have great like cathedral, and so where, like, if you want to do anything in a London, you have to pay for it. But St. Andrews is a little different like that, because it's a small town, then a lot of the entertainment is free of cost.
I think also cooking with your friends really helps you to save costs because
Yeah, food is a huge cost, right? While St. Andrews does have amazing cafeterias and meal plans, and we cater to children with all kinds of dietary restrictions and requirements. But if you would, we also have residence halls which have shared kitchens. So you can choose to buy groceries and cook, and it's great bonding experience. Also, it's healthy and it's cost effective.
Okay. What are the biggest myths about studying abroad in an Indian student's mind?
I think that children paint a very rosy picture for themselves. I know when I was 16, 17 and applying to the US, I thought that I'll be going to like Harvard or something like that, and I would just be in these great big lawns, lush environment, barely studying, seeing from what things you see in TV, right? Like TV and movies. And studying will be minimal, and I'll be getting good grades very easily, and everything will be hunky dory. But that's not the case. It requires a lot of hard work. There are culture shocks and culture differences that are there. You do have a certain identity crisis also when you go abroad, because you have only grown up in the environment surrounded by people from your own country, right? Majority of the people. So suddenly you are now surrounded by people from all different countries and all different cultures. So you start questioning yourself. You're a bit insecure. The grades are not easy because you don't have any help apart from your faculty and your tuition. Like, your parents are not there. So it's difficult. It's not easy. It looks like it's a very fun and like everything is going to be great. It's easy to, go ahead and build the dream life, but it takes a lot of hard work. And it is a lot of, extra pressure on you because you're away from your home.
That's true. And once a student has finished his graduation from a university in the UK or Scotland, how difficult is it to get a job, or what is the reality of getting a job in Scotland?
See, the thing with the job is, it is, I would say, 70% is to do with your capabilities and what you put into it. You need to have the good grades. You need to have more than grades. It's important to know your subject and to have that knowledge. You need to be able to communicate and project your knowledge during an interview. Networking is extremely important factor of getting a job, right? And then also there's like 10-20% luck. Students who graduated during COVID, they were just really unlucky, right? Because jobs were very scarce, things, the whole world was shutting down. So it was very difficult for them to get jobs. And yeah, so I think maybe you don't get like the most ideal job, but for at St. Andrews, we give children as much as all the resources as possible, right? So one-on-one counseling for careers, helping you write your resume, helping you do mock interviews. We give you all the resources possible to get your foot into the door and to crack the interview. And then it depends on you and your luck to be able to actually get the job.
How important is networking versus getting good grades while finding your first job in the UK?
It depends which industry you're in. Certain industries, they're very particular about grades when they are looking, when they are recruiting. Other industries, they don't really care about the grades, right? So, for example, some companies will have like a threshold that you need to have this minimum GPA just to apply. So, I would say it's good to at least have that minimum GPA, and then after that, to focus more on networking, to focus more on knowledge building, right? Networking also needs to be with a purpose. You can't just be going to events and like without any goal in mind. And without networking, I feel, is a give and take, right?
Yeah.
So with, if you're just trying to collect business cards and then cold calling and sending emails without any connect, that's not going to work in your favor. So you need to know which companies you want to target, who are the people, why you want to be reaching out to them, and how can you also contribute to them.
Correct. What's the one thing you wish you knew before moving abroad?
The one thing I wish I knew before I went abroad to study was to remember to have fun. Okay. I had a lot of pressure. I kind of went to the US. My father was very keen for me to go to Singapore. I had got into all the main colleges in Singapore as well. And he wanted me to be closer home. But I was very keen on New York and I was very keen on NYU. So I had a lot of pressure, right? Me personally. So I put in too much of my time and energy into the grades, into the recruiting. And I do feel in the first 2 years, I didn't, really be in the moment and enjoy, because those days are never going to come back. And that really, the college years are the best years of your life, and your college friends are going to be your friends forever. So I wish I remembered to have more fun and to really enjoy that, because it's like unforgettable and you can't get those days back.
I totally relate to you because even when I was in London, I just forgot that I'm here to have fun.
Yeah.
Because we've not reached an outcome yet. So we just keep thinking about the outcome and forget about that experience in the moment. Correct. So, how would you compare your life in India versus life in abroad? Is it really worth it?
Of course, yeah. I wanted to study abroad. I feel like I had an amazing multicultural exposure because I was in New York, and while I'm not trying to put down Indian education in any way, every country has its pros and cons. I personally am very, very happy with my college experience and my undergrad experience. For me, it was totally worth it because I'm a different person today. I am extremely confident. I have got to know myself. I've worked through a lot of my insecurities. I've changed industries after 10 years, which has not been easy, and gotten to know myself, become very independent, can do anything, can survive anywhere. At least that's what I feel.
Thank you for giving us all the information about studying and living at Scotland and being at a top university like St. Andrews. You also mentioned about studying at New York. So, NYU is a dream college for so many students in India because of amazing professors like Ashwath Damodaran sir, who is so popular in India right now. And you studied finance and economics for your bachelor's in New
Mhm.
York University. So, can you tell us more about your experience at NYU as well?
Yeah, sure. So I got into NYU for my undergrad, and it was a no-brainer for me. I went to the Stern School of Business, which is amongst the top in the world. And I wanted to study at that time. I was very keen on finance, and yeah, I've actually taken a class with Damodaran sir, and he is fantastic and definitely legendary. Um, my experience in NYU was fantastic. We were able to explore different courses of studies. So, did you know that with finance, I did a minor in creative writing and film? Because Tisch, the film school of NYU, is one of the best in the world as well, right?
And this was before the rise of the finfluencers. You didn't know finance and creative
Yeah,
writing
yeah.
could go together.
Yeah, I had no idea. I was actually very keen. I loved writing, and so that was just one of the things I wanted to pursue. And yeah, because the NYU gave me that opportunity to do that. And again, like the students that you meet in business school and the students that you meet in film school are completely different. So it was fantastic to be able to get friends from all different schools and like different ethnicities, different backgrounds. It was just a really wholesome and really fulfilling and character developing experience.
So NYU is situated in a very urban setting, and a lot of people who live there say that NYU does not have a campus because when you look at other US universities, they have acres and acres of land as their campuses. So how is it staying and how is it living at NYU? How does an Indian student experience life at NYU?
Yeah, I mean, you're living in the best country, the best city in the whole world, right? New York. So the entire New York is your campus. What else could you ask? Of course, it's very scary at first because you're going in the subway and then you're an adult. Okay. You are, so that sheltered experience is not there. NYU has a bunch of buildings, mostly concentrated towards Washington Square Park. So that area does kind of feel like the whole NYU vibe is there. But yeah, you are very much intertwined with proper Manhattan. And I think that was fantastic because you're not just around students, you are around the top of the industries like in finance, in film, theater, fashion. So you get exposure to so many things, and instantly you become an adult because you're in the real world and you're in one of the hardest cities in the world as well.
What was that one thing about NYU that surprised you the most when you went there?
The one thing which I loved every aspect of NYU. I think one of the things that most pleasantly surprised me was the LGBTQ culture. I had no exposure to that coming from Calcutta, but when you go there, we are very, LGBTQ pro, and we have great pride parades, and we have a lot of students who are from that community who, they will educate you about that different how to interact with students, how to be sensitive to different issues. So I think one of the things which most pleasantly surprised me, which I didn't expect, was I would become even more liberal and even more broad minded, even more mindful of others with differences, even in terms of students with handicap. If there are students who are specially able, and why you would do such a great job in making other students cognizant to them, and integrating them into the other aspects also.
It makes you more empathetic and increases your openness.
Exactly, you said it really well. So that was not something I would think that I'm quite liberal, but coming from a Marwari society in Kolkata and then going to New York and being surrounded by people who are really very different, whether it's race, sexual orientation, ability, or career prospects, everything. So you become so open, and you see people for who they are. You appreciate them for who they are.
What was your wildest experience when you were there?
My wildest experience, we had a lot. I don't think I can talk about all of them. So in the summer of my junior year, I was interning with BNP Paribas, and my one of my best friends, Kriti, she was interning with Bank of America, and we just decided that, this movie Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara had come out, and we were like, okay, we want to do skydiving. So on one weekend, we just booked a skydiving thing in Long Island, and on a random Saturday, we took a train to Long Island. We did the skydiving, we came back, and on Monday, we were back at work. So that's the amazing thing about New
Wow.
York, right? You have access to so many different experiences that you can wake up one day, like literally while we are going on the plane, we are talking about vacuum cleaners and like how to keep our house clean. Then we do the skydiving and we come back.
Wow, that's so interesting. So the internship at BNP Paribas or your friend's internship at Bank of America, is this integrated as a part of the NYU curriculum, or is this something where the student has to be proactive and look for?
I No, it's not part of the curriculum. You're encouraged to get an internship in your junior summer. You have the visa requirement to be able to do it. It's called OPT. So it comes out from that, and you have to. While most of these big companies they come on campus to recruit from NYU, the heavy lifting has to be done by you. You have to submit your resume. You have to submit your application. You have to crack the interview. You have to do the networking. So NYU helps you like any other college.
What exactly is OPT and CPT?
OPT is gives you 12 months of ability to work in the US as part of your student visa. So you'll be going in with an F1 visa, F1 student visa, and you get 12 months. If you're a STEM student, you get 3 years of OPT. Now you can use that work allowance while you're still studying. So in your junior summer or any of your other summers, or once you graduate, you can use that to do full time work also. Once your OPT runs out, then typically during that period, you're supposed to be applying for your H1B, which is your work visa.
Mhm. So how does NYU help students to get placements at places like the Wall Street, which is right next to NYU?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have one of the biggest advantages of NYU Stern Business School is that it is in Manhattan and it is a financial hub of the US. We have companies coming in to do, campus recruitment, but also we have networking, we have industry speakers, we have, visits to the stock exchange, visits to Bloomberg headquarters, various opportunities for internships. They're so easy because they're right there in the city, right?
At NYU, how does a student get networking opportunities?
Yeah, so we have a very robust careers cell. NYU has one, and you get access to different speaker events. Speakers come to the campus. You have different companies coming in, talking about their company, talking about different departments within their company. Alumni are there, right? So you have, it might be that the students, if you're in the freshman year and there's someone in the senior year and they've just graduated and they're now working in a Goldman Sachs or a JP Morgan, so you can access them through your alumni network and try to get to know more about the kind of work that they do and whether there are vacancies in their company. On campus recruitment is there. These are the ways in which you get access.
How intense was your curriculum at NYU while you're pursuing your bachelor's program?
So I did my bachelor's in of science in finance and economics with a minor in creative writing and film. So I did make my life as tough as it could be by choosing all those options. That said, it was very well spaced out. It is tough, no doubt. You do around, it depends, you can do around anywhere between 4 to 5 classes every semester. And you have each class has maybe somewhere between 3 to 4 hours of teaching time, and then there are tutorials, and you have to do your own homework and group work and lab work if that's relevant. So it is intensive, but that's what you're going to do, going there for. So that's what your bulk of your time should be doing your academic pursuits, right? Um, Apart from that, I feel you can lighten the load by taking a couple of easier classes. If you are more of a quant person, then you can take more quantitative. If you're not so good with the quants, then you have the option of designing your own curriculum.
Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how tough is the curriculum at NYU?
I would say it depends which curriculum you're doing, but if I'm talking about finance, then it was an 8 out of 10.
Okay, how good were the networking opportunities?
10 out of 10.
How great are the internship opportunities?
10 out of 10. Does not get better for finance than NYU.
How expensive is the school?
It is expensive. Probably, I would say 8 or 9 because it's expensive to live in Manhattan.
And is it value for money?
Yeah, sure. Because you also, even though you're spending more than probably other kids going to other colleges, at the end of the day, it's possible that you get a higher paying job.
And for the closing note, can you please tell us how does the NYU brand name, how much does it help while you get your job?
Yeah, brand name helps. It's a instant pull and it's an instant foot in the door for sure. But again, I will emphasize that NYU also every batch has like 400, 500 kids, right? From just the business school. So you still do need to differentiate yourself from those children, and you do need to have your passion for the subject and know what you're doing. So brand name helps, but it's not the only thing. You still have to do the hard work.
Okay, and Akriti, if you had to do this all over again, what was that one thing that you would do differently?
I think I mentioned this earlier also. The one thing I would do differently would be have more fun, right? So I was very stressed out for a large part of my college life because it was always about getting the best grades, getting the best job, getting the internship. And while we did have a lot of fun, I would make sure this time around I have even more fun, spend more time, go to more Broadway shows, go see the US Open. And, these are experiences which people will die for, living in other parts of the world. Go for more concerts, see another Taylor Swift, for sure. So those are the aspects I would want to do.
Only when you've achieved everything that you wanted to, you realize you skipped the fun part. Yeah. So UK versus US has been one of the biggest debates in Indian students, and you've experienced both. You've studied at the top universities at New York and London, being New York University and Imperial College in London. Let's talk a bit about how it was different while you were there and in London. What was the biggest difference in academics?
So, in terms of undergraduate, if we're talking about the US curriculum is a 4-year program, okay, and the UK curriculum everywhere except Scotland is a 3-year program. So that itself is a big difference. In the US, you have the option of studying multiple subjects. You have the option of going undecided as your major and then figuring it out, like really, exploring, experimenting. Like I said, I have done my bachelor's in finance and economics were my majors, and I minored in creative writing and film. That was really important to me because when I went, I was not sure between, the business. I was not ready to commit to the business aspect. I also wanted to keep my creative aspects open. In the UK, if you're applying to England, then you have to choose the subject and you have to be, studying that subject only. So that's great. If you already know what you want to study and you're very passionate about it, then great. That's an amazing choice for you. If you're a little bit unsure and you still want to go to the UK, then you can consider Scotland because Scotland offers the same flexibility that the US offers. So in terms of curriculum, that's the biggest difference. There's the 3-year, 4-year, more flexible versus less flexible programs.
So which country has a more student-friendly approach?
I would say both countries are very student-friendly. And if you go to the top colleges, they check all the boxes, like in terms of activities, experiences, career department, wellness support, and all of that. So there's not much difference in terms of being student friendly. If you're going to a big city versus a college campus, then there will be a difference. So if you're in a New York University or you're in Columbia, or then you're in the main city, right? Whereas if you're in Cornell or Brown, then you're in a campus town. So I would say it's more friendlier if you're in a college town. Similarly, if you're in Imperial in London, then you're in London City. It's a bit difficult. You're in the real world as an adult. Whereas if you're in St. Andrews, you're sheltered. You're immersed in the academic life. There's low crime rate, almost negligible. So those are the differences.
So if someone wants a vibrant campus life but wants the benefits of networking at the same time, what would you recommend for them?
I would say that yeah, you can choose to be in a city campus if you want a vibrant campus life as well as networking. Choose a college which has a slightly bigger campus, maybe something like if you're in the US, something like Columbia. Which has a bit more of a integrated campus than in NYU, but I would say the difference is quite minor.
Okay. How would you compare the social life while you were in the US compared to the UK, which has a better and a more inclusive, I would say, social life?
So from my personal experience, I went to the US from the ages of 18 to say 23. And when I was in London, I was 30 plus, right? And so the what I was seeking in my social life was also very different. Of course, when you're 18 and you're in Manhattan, you're doing crazy things and, you're really putting yourself out there. And then later in life, I was more, more settled down. I actually did my MBA after I got married. So I was more focused on the career aspects of it. I was doing it in a hybrid module. So, I was flying back and forth. So I was not as integrated into the London life per se. But I'm sure both London and New York have their own advantages and they're both exceptional.
Better job opportunities, is it the US or the UK?
Okay, so this is a very subjective to which industry you want to be in. If we are talking about finance, or then possibly it's very similar in the both whether you're in the UK or in the US. If you're more into tech, of course, US is the leader of tech in the world. AI and big data and everything is doing very well, and kind of the hub of that for the world. So US would be a better option if you're into that field. In terms of creativity, if you are doing film, things like the US are probably more experimental, whereas if you want to do English literature, politics, international relations, possibly the UK will be a better option. This is just my personal opinion and my personal understanding. I'm sure both the countries are great at all of the things, but just slight differences, in my personal opinion.
Is it easier to get a work visa in the UK or the USA?
So the way the work visa works is in the UK, you have the graduate route visa, which is 2 years of work visa that is attached to your student visa itself. So you can work for 2 years in the UK after you graduate, as long as it's a UK recognized institution, like a recognized degree. And in the US, you have OPT. So if you are just a regular student, then you get 1 year of OPT where you can work full time. If you're a STEM student, then you can work up to 3 years in that before transferring to a proper work visa. So in the UK, you transfer to a skilled worker visa. And that has to be sponsored by a licensed UK company. And in the US, you transfer to a H1 visa. So I feel personally that it's easier in the UK. You're getting 2 years to find a job. And after you graduate, if you're not a STEM student, and even after you graduate, I find that the UK companies are a bit more willing to sponsor the skilled worker visas, and the demand for the H1B is extremely high in the US, and it usually goes into lottery system. The year I applied, it went into lottery, and only 1 in 5 students got it. 5 applicants got it.
One.
I was the unlucky one because I didn't get my H1B despite being sponsored by BNP Paribas. And then I transferred to Australia with the same bank. So, like literally, we had like a group of 15 friends. There were only like two people who got it.
So, what is a better option if someone wants to settle abroad?
Um, See, it really depends on your personal choice. If you want to be slightly closer to home, then UK. If you are more into tech and you want a more liberal arts education, and you are very sure that you want the American life, then the US. If you're a STEM student, it's better to do the US, and you want to settle abroad, then it's better to do STEM in the US, because at least you have that 3-year buffer then.
But you did your master's at Imperial and you studied the hybrid global MBA that you spoke
Yes.
about. So, how exactly is it different from a normal MBA? What are the pros and the cons?
Sure. So at Imperial, I did the what's called the Global Online MBA program. I applied during COVID in 2020. At that time, we felt that the world is ending and we're never going to be living in the normal world again. And also, I was engaged to be married at that time. So there was not really a possibility for me to relocate full time. So it actually ended up being a fantastic option, because the mix of the COVID restrictions plus my own restrictions were being met, and I was still being able to pursue my further education, right? So the Imperial Global Online MBA is a very interesting program. It's 2 years. The first year is entirely online. You do it core modules online. You do have to go to the campus for your orientation. And then in the second year, you can take up to 3 to 4 classes on campus. So I would fly back and forth for my for my classes, and they're held in different formats. They conduct the classes over a month. They can conduct the class over a weekend also. Like a very intensive crash course kind of thing. And it's meant for working professionals. So I have my batch of 100 students at Imperial. There were around 10 to 15 students who live in London, but they still chose to do the MBA in a hybrid model rather than a full-time MBA, because they didn't want to quit their jobs and they wanted to have that flexibility, right? So my Imperial MBA experience was fantastic. My cohort were all very accomplished, highly accomplished industry executives, right? Because this is meant for working professionals.
So, how many times did you go on campus?
I went a lot of times. The first year, because of COVID, I was not able to go for my orientation also. Second year, I did 3 electives on campus. And then we went for the capstone, which is the final project, which everybody has to come down for that. And that was amazing, because it was like 100 of us together, and we worked for 1 week on our individual end of course projects.
That's great. So you can choose how many modules you want to take on campus, and you can also choose to take them online.
Correct. You can also choose to take them at other locations. That's why it's called the Global MBA, right? So we have classes which are offered in Brazil. We have classes which are offered in Finland, and all over the world. And you have to choose which topic you want, and you can choose the location. There's a class in Houston and Kenya. So it really is, the world is your oyster. And I actually did a class in IIT Delhi. So that was a class on frugal innovation, and that was Imperial was doing it in collaboration with IIT Delhi.
That's interesting. Imperial never fails to impress me. Okay, so for the closing note, please tell us, if you had to pick just one, the US or the UK, what would you pick if you had to go back to study?
Okay, so I would say for undergrad, possibly the US, because that's when you want to explore and experiment. And for postgrad, the UK was a better option for me, because I already knew what I wanted to do.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here with us. All your knowledge and insights were really very helpful. I'm sure our students are going to benefit a lot with these insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope to do another session with you soon.
Thank you for watching our video. Hope this was very informative, and we'll keep coming up with new content. So like, share, and subscribe for more such videos.